The Battle of Plancenoit began around 8 a.m. as the advance guard of the French army under General Sith met the Dutch advance guard of 2nd Lieutenant Menely near Maison du Roy, a farmhouse. Confused fighting began in the farmhouse while both armies deployed. Around 8:40 a.m., his troops were still getting into position, an artillery duel began. The fierce fire from the French guns made the Dutch retire a few paces. At 9 a.m., the French saw the enemy retreating, concentrating near Plancenoit, but also keeping some forces on a hill near La Belle Alliance. At the same time, the French center secured its position in Maison du Roy as the right wing concentrated its forces. Captain Good then assembled a grand battery of cannons near the farmhouse. The second bloody artillery duel then began. The French line was under heavy bombardment, forcing Sith's lancers to distract the enemy's artillery. At the same time, the cavalry battle was fought just outside Genappe. Marshal Bunny's hussars came to help the French line. A few moments later, the French were able to re-establish the line. Marshal Bunny, the commander-in-chief of French forces, then ordered the infantry to retire some good paces. At 10:40 a.m., General Sith's troops captured La Belle Alliance. At this moment, according to French information, the Dutch had less cannons and cavalry than the French, and therefore they would only defend. This was wrong, as the advance guard of Sith felt the heavy bombardment. But suddenly, for the surprise of the French, enemy forces appeared rapidly behind the apparently weak line. From 11:20 to 11:30 a.m., the positions of both sides were not very clear, as there were many movements happening at once, but the map shows where the most concentration was. The Dutch, too, assembled a great battery of cannons on a hill. Around noon, General Darjeeling ordered the left wing forward. Bunny was forced to send in his reserves to stabilize the line. With heavy losses, the Dutch attack stalled and they were forced to fall back. But then Marshal Zunna rallied his men and renewed the assault. With the French artillery distracted by this assault, the Dutch artillery was able to kill and disable many guns. The heavy weight of fire made it impossible for either side to advance. The constant bombardment of artillery throughout the day would kill or wound thousands of troops from both sides. There was a lot of debate in French headquarters and whether the French should attack or hold. After long minutes of talking, a vital message arrived. Major French reinforcements were coming with just 2 miles of distance. Marshal Bunny ordered a general attack. The attack was led by Goku's and Stinger's troops on the right. General Sith then led his lancers forward. They charged the main enemy battery, causing great disorder and destruction. The French artillery moved forward, close enough to fire canister shot into the packed Dutch lines. To minimize the effect of the French artillery, Marshal Zunna ordered all the line infantry and grenadiers to move forward. In some areas, soldiers fired at point-blank range. Artillery could not miss, and corpses began to fill the field. At this moment, the Dutch began to charge their infantry into the French lines, and a great carnage unfolded. Sith's troops had been fighting since dawn. They were the first to break and rout. Colonel Stinger led a bold infantry charge that broke the remains of the Dutch artillery. The French army turned and ran. The French situation was precarious. Entire corps had been destroyed. It seemed that there was no chance of raising back up from this. While the French attack was going on, General Chunk had rode to the French reinforcements, informing them of the situation and urging the troops to go directly into action. This decision proved crucial, as just 20 minutes later the French were already in battle position. A cavalry charge, supported by skirmishers, broke the small advance guard. The French then retreated to their main line, when the Dutch reinforcements also arrived. There were insufficient witnesses to accurately portray the combat that happened next, but the map will try to represent the possible positions and strengths of the troops. While the Dutch were marching towards Plancenoit, Marshal Bunny was able to intercept the artillery and cavalry, which meant that until more Dutch reinforcements arrived, they would be considerably outnumbered. Zinger and Gud began the attack on the town. Despite being outnumbered, the Dutch were in a stronger defensive position. Seeing this, General Chunk ordered an immediate withdrawal until more French troops had arrived in position. The Dutch saw this and charged forward, only to be met with disciplined volleys from the French and General Sith's troops in their flank. Captain Gud then saw a gap on the Dutch line. He led his cuirassiers towards their main battery of cannon. General Sith then led his lancers and hussars to finish off the broken infantry. Artillery and cavalry then finished the enemy completely. Those who didn't fled the battlefield. But French scouts then brought an alarming information. The Dutch reinforcements had arrived. The French must withdraw now or face annihilation. At 4 p.m., the French high command spotted the enemy's columns. Most thought that the French couldn't stand such a strong enemy, but nevertheless, the French army settled into battle positions. As the French columns began to advance, they were hit by terrible fire from the Dutch grand battery of rockets. It wouldn't be long before the sun set, and General Chunk refused to accept defeat. He began planning an attack. He began issuing orders for a final attack. This would decide the fate of the battle. To cheers of Vive l'Empereur, the French advanced into the infernal fire. The French left flank was the main target for the Dutch gunners, allowing the French to try and outflank them on the right. When Sith saw Bunny getting his horse killed under him, he led a cavalry charge that broke part of the Dutch center. For unknown reasons, marshals on a charged Sith's weak line. Sith, who now faced odds of more than 6-1, stood his ground, shouting Vive l'Empereur, while his battery of cannon killed all those who dared to charge at their general. Around the same time, Mentally Sane and Stauber also charged the French line, but seeing the heavy losses, they called it off. General Chunk spotted a gap on the Dutch line. With no hesitation, he ordered his hussars to charge the main battery. The French center had fallen. For the French, there was nothing to gain by turning back. They would continue to attack. After some savage fighting, the Dutch thought they had broken the French line, and so they fixed their bayonets and charged. The French army turned and ran. French artillery then merciless shot canister shot into the Dutch ranks, killing thousands of troops within minutes. Captain Good then blundered. Instead of charging his cavalry towards the main battery, he instead charged the line infantry. The French horses were massacred by the wall of men in steel. After another hour of savage fighting, the French began to lose ground. But urged by Chang, Bunny, Sith, and Gut, Colonel Stinger rallied his troops and launched a counterattack. By now the Dutch were exhausted. Some units didn't even have ammunition. One sharp blow and they would be routed. When the French began to advance, the Dutch turned and ran. They were then chased across the fields.